Hello and welcome to another video from me, Rough Swordsman, Wargamer. It's an open the box and it's an unboxing of a game I've actually done a playthrough for, done with the prototype version of the game I'm about to show you, but it's now been released and I can now show you it in all its retail glory. It is Halls of Hegra, a game designed by Schanke Olsen and published by Tompet Games. And I must thank Petter for sending me the finished product so I can show off what's in the box. So in case you don't know, what's all this about? From an abandoned mountain fortress, you command a group of Norwegian volunteers fighting numerically superior German forces in the early days of World War II. Halls of Hegra is a solo-only game where you play as the commander during the siege, which is divided into 3 stages. The mechanisms you will use are worker placement, bag building, and area control / tower defense. So here you can see the content, which we'll have a look at in a moment. It's ages 14 plus, 1 player of course, and will take you about 70 to 90 minutes. As I mentioned earlier, I've actually done a playthrough of this on the prototype that they sent me, and if you want to check that out, I'll leave a link up here. Right, let's get the shrink wrap off. The shrink wrap is off, and it's a 10.5-inch square box, 2 inches deep. So, let's open the box. Okay, so the first thing we'll look at, as always in these unboxings, are the rules. They are full colour and come in at 32 pages. So we've got a list of components. How to set up the game. A little bit of a setup, but it's fully explained here. Sorting out the event cards, the hope and despair cards. And the game is actually split into 3 stages or parts. You've got mobilization, where you're frantically trying to go around and explore the fortress, maybe trying to clear the snow to find hidden equipment, supply routes are planned and all that sort of thing. And then the first attack from the Germans occurs from the 4th day or the 4th turn, and the village below the fortress is attacked, so you try and defend that while you're trying to do final preparations for the main siege coming up on day 7. So the game sort of changes every few turns as the siege progresses. Each turn or stage of the game you've got split into 3 phases: the event phase, morning phase, and the day phase. Here are the defenders. We've got an officer, we've got some soldiers, medics, hunters, and volunteers. So those phases are explained in greater detail. The doubt tokens, because this is a push your luck game, when you draw your recruits for that turn, the recruits are getting sort of the wobblies and you can't draw any more. Going out for supplies. My impression of the rule book is that it's a little bit higgledy-piggledy, and my advice, if you decide to get this game, is to read the whole thing through to get an overview and then go back and start to set up the game, and you'll have an idea where certain things you need to look up are situated in that rule book. But don't let me put you off. This is quite a fun game. Infantry attack. Suppression. Charge. Damage tiles. Bane. One of the banes of the game. The air tiles. German infantry building up. Artillery rather building up. Morning phase. the day phase. Again, once you've done a couple of turns, you'll be whizzing through it. So all the things you can do if you find certain items when you dig them out of the snow. Here's where you go for your supplies. All the things you can do. Lots of decisions to make with very little time to do it. The infirmary, where wounded units go. Morale has to be looked after. Adding German patrol tokens which can hinder you trying to get your supplies in. I think these are new, the mission cards. Don't remember those, but that'll be interesting. You can adjust the difficulty. I don't think you need to make it any harder, but if you wish to, you can. Advanced event cards. Again, I think Petter's tweaked this since I did my playthrough. So it looks like there's even more in the game. And then right at the end, because this game is using a subject which I think is the only one around on this siege of Hegra, there's some background historical information. There we are. A player aid at the back showing you what happens in each of the phases or stages and how those are broken down and what you can do. So there we are. Them's the rules. Next, we've got some bags of wooden bits and pieces. So let's have a look at those. We've got some cubes, which we're going to use on the game board to mark certain tracks. And some artillery pieces. Next, we've got these black meeples, which represent the Germans. And then there are discs representing the defenders. So let's have a look at those. Now, if you watch my playthrough of Hall to Hegra, the prototype I was sent had these discs in it, but they didn't have the icons printed on them. And as you probably know, I'm colorblind, so I had a little difficulty with these two. So I had to put a little sticker on one to distinguish it from the other. But look now, we care not what color they are, us colorblind people, because these icons tell us exactly what each counter is. So the single black disc is the officer, one with the bullets are the soldiers, the strong arm are the hunters, and the soldiers, of course, are good for fighting the Germans. The strong arm hunters are good for getting supplies and digging the snow out, which we'll look at in a moment. Here are the volunteers with the pitchfork, and of course these are the medics. The one without anything on are the dreaded doubt discs, which you'll become unfortunately familiar with if you play the game. Next, a couple of small sheets of counters. Here's the first one. Some mist tiles here. These will go in the bags, which we'll show you in a moment. Some status tiles. And these are the damage tiles you'll use to mark certain pieces of equipment that need repair. These are the artillery tiles and the air tiles, which give you damage from the air. Here we've got the delivery tokens for when you get your supplies, you've been successful. These are the German patrol tokens. And on the other side, it's virtually the same, but here we are. And on the back here, you can see numbers on the German patrol counters. And this is the number of the track that they are placed on to hinder your supply runs. And a smaller set of counters, which you'll draw if you successfully clear the snow away and find something special hidden underneath it. Because on the other side, this is what you can find. You can uncover the map room, find the radio, there's a medicine cabinet, the second gun, but of course all these are still damaged and we have to repair them, as well as some sort of general goodies that you can find, some supplies, extra water and such. Because part of the mechanics of the game require you to draw tokens from bags, they supply those. Here's the recruit bag to draw your volunteers, soldiers and hunters and such. The hit bag where you'll get all the bad things, and the patrol bag for the German patrols that you'll need to draw to hinder your supply runs. 5 cute little dice. There are also some cards, so let's have a look at those. So the first ones are the mission cards, which I don't remember from the prototype, so this is something new Petter has added. There we are. That's a good thing. And then the decks are split into the different sort of phases of the game. We've got the mobilization, and there are more cards in here than turns of the mobilization, so you've got a lot of replayability, and every card tells you exactly what you need to do, the weather, how many doubt tokens to add and draw from the bag, and something usually bad that happens. After mobilization, the first attack occurs. So again, same sort of format of the cards, weather and what you do to the bag, but this time you see you're drawing some Germans. Starts to get a bit hairy. Then the 2 sieges, siege 1. And just move those along a bit. Siege 2. Oh dear, don't like the look of those. And sort of do or die at the end, the last stand. And then we have these high and low morale cards. And as the name suggests, the high morale cards are good, giving you extra bits and pieces. However, there are these despair cards which you are told to add to the high morale deck at certain times. And of course, you don't know which is which because they've got the same back. And the same occurs with the low morale cards, and they're pretty bad. But there are occasions when you'll be able to add some hope to the deck. But again, you won't know where they are because they've got the same back of the card as the low morale. And here's the mounted game board. I can't quite fit it all in, but we'll have a look around it in a bit more detail. Up the top will be places for the cards. Here's the supply run map, various tables down this side. Let's have a close-up. And up the top here, we've got those places for the cards I just showed you. And here is a sort of map of the area. Here's what you are defending. These are the supply routes, and on these will be placed the German patrols, and those numbers on the back correspond to these numbers, so you know where to place them. And each sort of line is color coded to do which part of the game you're playing. Down here we'll place those snow tiles, and here's the snow track. It starts here, and if you can move it down and clear the snow, you can flip the top snow card. Unfortunately, if it gets up here, you have to draw a nasty from the hit bag. Here's the weather. That will determine how quick you can move on these supply tracks. And hunters have an advantage on this here, as well as clearing snow. And up the top are the type of supplies you can get. Up here are your sort of bog standard supplies, and the amount you have is recorded here, which will allow you to do certain things. Here you can remove German patrols if you get up and back with one of those tokens. Here you can add a miss token to the hit bag, so there's a greater chance of nothing bad happening. And up here, again, I think this is new as well. Up here is the morale, and it's these tokens which you'll place up the top here to gather. Over here we add air patrols, and this is where those dreaded artillery are placed, and it increases as time goes on. Explanation of the tiles in the hit bag. You can attack the airfield, which is all explained in the rules, and down here is the place where counters that have been used get ready to be replaced back into the game. When they're used to do something, they're tired and they move up until they're ready. I think, if I remember rightly, you can bypass this, but there is a cost. Up here we've got the suspicion track. So I think as you do more and more supply runs, the Germans become more and more suspicious until, if you get to the top, they think, hello, something's going on, let's add some more patrols. Here's a space for one of the snow tiles. If you pick that one, there are others dotted about the map. So that's the top half of the map. So on the second half of the map, over here, a rather clever, I think anyway, sort of mechanism. Depending on what part of the game you're at, mobilization, first attack, or the sieges, determines what goes on here. And you'll use this depending on what part of the game you're in. So for the mobilization phase, this will be placed here, and this is all you can do. So you can open a new supply route, negotiate, and these cost, which we'll have a look at here. And once the mobilization phase is done, you get into the first attack, and this becomes a new part of the game. So we've got some attacks going on. So you can't, once you're into the first attack, can't open up any more supply routes or negotiate. So again, you've got to think ahead and spend your units wisely. And then once the first attack is done, you're in to defend the walls with the sieges. So a rather clever little mechanic there. Up here we've got fire at the Germans, but you've got to repair. When you set this up, these will all be damaged. You've got to repair the guns, as well as the artillery you've got to repair that. Here's one of them. You might get another gun 2, from digging out the snow tiles. Here's the infirmary where damaged units go, and depending on how unlucky you are with your dice throws, depends on where they start. There are 3 beds, and if you throw high, they're not injured too much and can get back up into the game quicker, whereas if you throw a low number, you've got to move this up every sort of turn, and that takes time. And if you fill these 3 beds up, any other casualties have to go in the waiting room, and if they wait too long, they get to the morgue. Here's a couple more of these spaces for the snow tiles that you might pick. And here is the sort of cost of things. So to shovel snow will cost you 1 unit. To move the snow track, can't use an officer, it's below him. If you use a hunter, you can move that cube twice. So repairing again, the officer doesn't get involved, but it will cost you 2 units to do that. And so on. Bolster, promote, and inspire. This one can only be done by the officer, and that will move the morale marker up. So you've got to keep this as high as possible. Here we've got some modifiers which you'll look at. If you're out of supply, this will move down. Starts on 0, I believe. And those cards I showed you earlier, the high and low morale cards, this is where they can possibly be added. If you keep this up here, you can add the high morale cards and draw 3 of them. If it gets down here, you start drawing from the low morale deck. The surrender track, which you'll check every turn. So everything costs for you to do activities on this map. So yes, it's using your units wisely. Of course, the medics will be able to treat any injured units quicker if you place one here. Volunteers, when you draw them, give you an extra supply because they bring their own supplies with them, things like that. And right down the bottom here, we've got your gun because it's you that's controlling everything on here through your officer. And just out of shot before is the sort of game track. So as you can see, there's only 3 turns for mobilization. So you've got to open up those supply routes if you want to get your supplies off of the map. But you've only got 3 turns to do that. This is how many of those German patrols you will add at each turn. Then we're into the first attack. Then we're into the siege 1 and siege 2. And down here is the surrender track. And if it gets up to the top, of course, that's it. If you can get it down here, they retreat, do the Germans. And that's everything in the box. So this has been an Open the Box, an unboxing of a brand new game about a battle, a siege that occurred in Norway. And I believe this is the only game on that conflict. And it is Halls of Hegra, a solitaire game designed by Peter Schanke Olsen and published by Tompet Games. Well, I hope you enjoyed that and you found it interesting. If you did and you haven't done so already, it would be great if you would consider subscribing to the channel. It really does help. Another thing that helps tremendously is pushing the old like button, the thumbs up underneath the video. And if you want to be informed of other content the channel uploads, then push the old bell. But make sure you push all notifications. Otherwise, YouTube, being the tinkers that they are, might not tell you when the channel uploads a new video. As always, leave a comment. As I mentioned at the start of the video, I have a playthrough of this using the prototype of the game, which is virtually the same, apart from a couple of new things, which I'm interested to find out how they work. But leave a comment. Let me know what you think, because as you know, I love to read them. Thanks as always to my subscribers for sticking with me. Thank you so much. And as always, just before I go, a quick plug. If you wish to support the channel a little bit further, well, you can buy the channel a coffee. And there's a link for that in the description. Or if you wish, you can push the super thanks button underneath the video. If you decide to do that, the channel thanks you because it helps to keep it ticking along. Right then, that's the Halls of Hegra. Keep watching the channel to see what's next. But until then, as always, you take care and goodbye.